Hey, what's good, fam? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com following Alabama's 55-17 victory over the LSU Tigers, coming to you from beautiful Tuscaloosa on Sunday, December 6th. And we start out leading this particular video talking about Nick Saban against unranked opponents. No problem. With Alabama's 55-17 victory over LSU, Alabama has now defeated 97 consecutive unranked opponents under Nick Saban, the longest streak in FBS history. The current streak, get this, dates back to Colorado when Alabama defeated the Colorado Buffaloes way back in 2007. Just think about it. Pretty remarkable. Where were you back in 2007? All right, Alabama sets record for points against LSU. Alabama wrapped up their victory over the LSU Tigers 55-17. Those 55 points are the most the Crimson Tide has scored in any game against LSU in the series history. The previous record for Alabama that they scored against LSU was 47 when Alabama beat LSU 47-3 back in Tuscaloosa back in 1922, all right? 35 or more points in 22 straight games. The Crimson Tide scored 55 points against LSU, including 45 in the first half. The total marked the 22nd time that the Alabama Crimson Tide offense has scored 35 points or more, which is the longest streak in major college football history. 600 total yards of offense. Alabama eclipsed the 600-yard mark, rolling up 650 yards of offense against LSU. The Crimson Tide has now gone over 600 yards only 8 times prior to this matchup with the Tigers, most recently against Ole Miss on October 10th, when Alabama produced 723 yards of offense against Ole Miss. Mac Jones, he's been incredible. Against Auburn, he had a fantastic showing, tying the Iron Bowl record for 5 touchdowns in the game. Follows that up with a tremendous performance against the LSU Tigers. He was 20 of 28, 385 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. His quarterback rating, 234.7. Season totals, it's been pretty tremendous to see what Mac Jones has done. 3,100 yards, 27 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, in his quarterback rating of 210.82. And I think that's what really has separated Mac Jones from the rest of the pack. And I think that's really going to help Mac Jones win this Heisman Trophy. Look, I know it's not all about postseason awards. These guys would rather have a national championship. But, man, if you're working for it, let's make sure that these guys get these awards that they're working towards, right? His efficiency rating has been outstanding. I mean, to have an efficiency rating of 210 playing only SEC opponents through 9 games, that is ridiculous. I don't know if we'll ever see that again. Quick strike offense, all right? The Crimson Tide has scored 59 touchdowns this season, with 4 coming from the defense. The Tide offense is averaging 6 touchdowns per game. That's 55 during the season, with an astonishing 37 of those scores coming in drives in less than 3 minutes. How many times have we seen this from Alabama's offense this season? Even over the past seasons, right? Their ability to score touchdowns within 2 minutes, 1 minute. I mean, against LSU, they put touchdowns on the board in a minute 17, a minute 16. This team on the offensive side of the ball, and it all stems from that offensive line, right? I mean, those guys don't get enough credit. I want to talk about the offensive line as much as possible because that's the main reason that Alabama is able to put up these ridiculous stats. Yeah, a lot is about DeVonta Smith. A lot is about Mac Jones, and we're going to talk about those guys. But the offensive line, what they're able to do, the protection that they're able to allow for Mac Jones has really been incredible. And I can't not overstate my appreciation just watching the offensive line. When you slow everything down, it's really incredible. I mean, think about this. Mac Jones has thrown the football 255 times this entire season. He's only been sacked 8 times this year. Pretty incredible numbers, right? Let's continue, and let's talk about DeVonta Smith. Against LSU, the Tigers haven't been able to stop DeVonta Smith over the last 2 seasons. Remember, DeVonta Smith out of Amite, Louisiana. He's a Louisiana native. In 2019, he had 213 yards with 2 touchdowns in 2019. This game on Saturday, 231 yards. All right, so the grand total against LSU in the last 2 matchups, 15 receptions, 444 yards with 5 touchdowns. I mean, you can't stop him, right? Nobody can stop the Slim Reaper. I love it. DeVonta Smith continues to shine. And when we look at kind of the Heisman talk, why isn't DeVonta Smith in the Heisman talk? Everybody's starting to kind of mention that. Let's look at the numbers real quick. So if we rewind to the 2014 season, that was when Amari Cooper was nominated for the Heisman Trophy. He was the last wide receiver to be nominated for the award, right? And look at the season that he put up. 124 receptions, monster numbers, 1,700 yards, and 16 touchdowns, okay? So where DeVonta Smith stands right now through 9 games, 80 receptions, 1,300 yards, and he has 16 total touchdowns, and he has 15 receiving and 1 rushing. But if you look at DeVonta Smith in the rest of the season, he's got Arkansas, he's got Florida, he's got a playoff game. Those are 3 more games, right? If Alabama is to win the playoffs, then they'll have another game in the national championship. So you're looking at DeVonta Smith having 4 more games. How many touchdowns could DeVonta Smith still put up, right? I know the Heisman Trophy award is determined before the national championship, but still, I mean, the guy, what he's doing is incredible, all right? Smith looking to set all the career records. DeVonta Smith passed up the 2020 NFL draft to return for his senior season, right? You heard the interview. He said, look, I didn't come to win the Heisman Trophy. I came back to help Alabama win a national championship. Great interview that you can watch right here on our YouTube channel. He's in the process of rewriting the Alabama record books. Overall, Smith has totaled 198 receptions, 3,400 yards, 38 touchdowns, while averaging 17.2 yards per grab. He already owns the career touchdown receptions mark and ranks in the top 5 in 2 other major receiving categories. What he's doing is unbelievable. And the best thing about DeVonta Smith is his humbleness about everything, right? The guy's the most humble cat, and he's doing things that scream greatness, right? Guy's completely got that Mamba mentality. I love watching him. That one-handed catch, couldn't even believe it. I think it was the catch of the entire season. Let's talk about Naji Harris. Naji Harris has racked up now 20 rushing touchdowns during the season. 20 rushing touchdowns, right? Naji Harris entered the game against LSU with 893 yards, and he added 145 yards on top of that, right? So his season total is 1,000 yards for a second consecutive season. He's went over the 1,000-yard mark, right? Last season, as a junior, he had 1,200 yards. So overall, I mean, look at his numbers. 145 yards against LSU and 3 touchdowns. So now his total, 3,400 yards with 40 touchdowns in his career. Those numbers include 783 yards and 4 scores as a sophomore to go with 370 yards and 3 touchdowns as a freshman. So, I mean, the last 2 years have been really dynamic. Alabama's all-time leader in career rushing yards is Derrick Henry with 3,500 from 2013 to 2015. So Naji Harris could surpass Derrick Henry as all-time leading rusher within these next 2 games, right? And the career total touchdowns for running backs is Mark Ingram and Derrick Henry, which each have 42. Naji Harris already has 40. So, I mean, Mark Ingram, Derrick Henry, when you're mentioned in that company, I mean, think about that. Those are 2 of the greatest from Alabama, and Naji Harris is about to pass both of those guys. Can't say enough about the play, the determination, the character of Naji Harris. I think this entire offensive group, we're going to miss these guys, right? The character that they have, the continuity that they have. Landon Dickerson, Naji Harris, Mac Jones. I know Mac Jones is only a redshirt junior. You get what I'm saying, right? DeVonta Smith. The leadership of this group is what I feel is really going to help this group overall bring home the next natty. All right, let's talk about the defense, right? They allowed 17 points against LSU in their 9th game of the season. But over the last 22 quarters, the Crimson Tide's defense has really come into its own. Since the halftime of that Georgia game, we keep reverting to that because that's really when we saw some sort of transition from the Alabama defense. Alabama has only allowed 50 points since that game. This is against all SEC competition. 0 against Georgia from the 3rd and 4th quarter, 17 against Tennessee overall, 0 against Mississippi State, 3 against Kentucky, 13 against Auburn, and 17 against LSU. All right. Otherwise known in the last 5.5 games, that's 9.1 points per game. In an age of college football where teams are scoring, 30, 40. I mean, Alabama, what they've been able to do during that midseason changeup has been pretty remarkable. We've also seen Alabama get to the quarterback. I know quarterback pressure is huge, and I think we've all seen it. When Alabama is able to get to the quarterback or get pressure on the quarterback, Alabama's defense plays much better. Season high in sacks against LSU. Alabama recorded a season high 5 sacks in the win over LSU. Coming into that game, the Tide had 14 sacks for the season. So, I mean, 5 sacks in one particular game, and 2 of those came from freshman William Anderson. You also had a sack from Josh Jobe off the edge. You also had a sack from Christian Barmore. These guys are playing at a very high level, and I love the blitz packages that were created against LSU. Sending Josh Jobe off the edge, love it. In a corner blitz, absolutely fantastic. And William Anderson, you just got to let that young man just go, right? I mean, it's really remarkable. Check this out. Against LSU, Alabama's leading tacklers, DeMarco Hellams, William Anderson, both of those guys had 8 tackles. You also had Malachi Moore, and you had Christian Harris, right, up in that leading tackle category. Those are 2 freshmen, and those are 2 sophomores. So you think about the guys, when you look down the line of Alabama's defense, very young, right? Very young, very talented. All right, let's move to special teams. Will Reichard, what he's been able to do has been fantastic. Perfect so far. Alabama place kicker Will Reichard is currently perfect, kicking all attempts during the 2020 season. The sophomore is 69 for 69 overall, including 10 for 10 on field goals to go with 59 made PATs. Just an incredible season that he's been able to have. I'm really excited for him, right? This guy was cut short during his freshman season with a hip flexor injury, came back, and really has emerged to that guy that we all knew he could be. He's an in-state guy who's out of Hoover, Alabama, and to see what he's been able to do, especially just on the little things, PATs, right? 69. That's the thing that I think all programs kind of take for granted. But over the last couple of years, Alabama's even struggled, missing PATs. I think they missed 13 last year. I'll have to check the numbers, but it was something ridiculous like that. It was the most in the SEC. 11 in a row for Reichard. Dating back to last season, place kicker Will Reichard has made 11 straight field goals, including all 10 attempts in 2020. As we just spoke about, the streak of 11 straight games is the 4th longest in the country. Arizona State has a kicker who has 13 consecutive made games without missing a field goal. So when you kind of put that into perspective, you really understand what Will Reichard is doing for the Alabama Crimson Tide. The Crimson Tide will continue on the road as they gear up for the Arkansas Razorbacks. That game will be next Saturday, followed by the SEC Championship game against the Florida Gators. I know there's going to be plenty to talk about moving forward. And don't forget, we also have National Signing Day, which is in mid-December as well. So Alabama, #1 in the college football playoff rankings, #1 in the Rivals.com recruiting rankings. This team has so much momentum. We'll continue to keep you posted on all things Alabama Crimson Tide. Reporting from beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com. If you guys could throw us a thumbs up, like, and definitely subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. We'll catch you soon next time right here on BamaInsider.com.